You mentioned the whole case with Twitter and Mastodon and decentralized social service thing, social networking. I have personally found when I was trying to work with the guys, and what we still find in very hard, and this is something I've seen in your blog, is about marketing decentralization, that people were completely unready and just really not wanting to use that because it's simply, it doesn't matter if it's decentralized, they don't care. It doesn't matter if it's nobody owns your data, that you own all the data. People just do not want to simply touch things they don't want to touch. They don't want to go beyond their, and I'm really sorry, apologize to say that to everybody, but like, beyond their responsibility bubble kind of thing. So the question is, how do we proceed on with explaining to everybody that what we are labeling here as Web3, that it's not a bad thing, that yes, there's got to be some responsibility, there's got to be some differences, but in the long term, this is what's going to benefit you. This is what's going to help those companies, those big 3 companies, 5 companies, stop from using you to their own desires as they intend. So the question is, sorry, long-term resume, how do we go on about marketing? And this is something I've seen in your blog that I would love to hear more from your opinion here.
Sure. First of all, walk the talk. How many Web3 companies publish to Medium without even bothering to map their own domain to it? You can't even be bothered to do it yourselves. So I think that's a start, is walk the talk in those sorts of ways. From my long involvement with open source, one of the phrases that I like to say is, when I got started in open source in the early 2000s, it was still a radical act. It isn't anymore today. And it leads to a lot of people, a lot of developers, not really engaging with it in a certain way. Some of this is just simply, how do we work together? How do we pool effort? There are a lot of financial incentives for everybody to build their own thing. But for the long term, what you really want is high quality standards and implementations that have a diverse set of maintenance and contributions over time. So I would also ask, how many of your upstream open source dependencies are you supporting? If you're not supporting them, why not? So I think a lot of this is movement building, is what it comes down to. And movement building takes a long time. To the point of marketing, you can't just keep telling people, well, in the long term, it's the right thing to do. And that applies to open source software as well. What are some things that you can get immediately that are different, that enables different things? I hear a number of projects who talk about things that like banking the unbanked. I'm like, that's amazing. That's an amazing focus.
I was just making a comment. I wasn't going to interrupt you, but I was saying, let's do the opposite. Let's unbank the bank and not bank the unbanked. Let's just.
That's great.
Let's do the opposite.
The banked.
Yes, exactly. That is what we need to do. Not bank the unbanked. Let's not give them banking. They don't need it. They need to unbank the unbanked. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, not at all. It's fantastic. Let's at least get some fun clips out of this, right? So I'm like, that's amazing. Are you spending some time on the ground in Southeast Asia or Africa or parts of South America or other places like this? I think that's another thing that I'd like to see more of is, when I was getting started with open source, it was the early 2000s. And frankly, the vast majority of people participating in open source were young white males in North America and Western Europe, because also those were the areas of the world that were online with who had high-speed internet at the very beginning that was connected and so on. Early 2000s were barely out of the dial-up times at that point. And so today, we really do have the whole world online. So we have a responsibility to get more people involved in different ways and then really address local problems, right? We have members on our team in Africa who don't have stable home internet. They actually use a mobile hotspot to connect, and that's fairly common. So can we use edge applications and IPFS to message and share data peer-to-peer? So those are the sorts of things that I'd want to be looking for. Yes, it's incredibly hard, but a lot of the Web3 space is developers sitting in front of a laptop or desktop with a large professional desktop operating system, building applications in full screen. If your stuff doesn't work on mobile and you only can use it with a browser extension, you're not building for the whole world.